Everyone, welcome along to The Assist, your new football preview show. It's week 2, and if you're not 100% sure of what to expect yet, then there'll be tips, stats, facts, and insight into this week's football across both the Premier League and the EFL. As ever, there'll be 2 pundits joining myself, Warren Ashurst, throughout the season, and today we've got James Milton and Dan Childs, who are back in the chair. If you want to watch our preview show, by the way, you can find that on the Racing Post YouTube channel. And for even more analysis, you can check out the Racing Post newspaper for our pullouts every Friday, which also goes by the same name as The Assist. Let's get straight into, though, the best bets of this weekend. And we'll start off with a big match of the Premier League, guys. Aston Villa against Arsenal on Saturday, a 5:30 kickoff. Villa are around about 16-5 to claim the victory. The draw 11-4, Arsenal 4-5. We'll start with you, James. You obviously have a bit of an interest in terms of Arsenal and how they've started the season in particular. And following on from that win against Wolves, confidence should be high.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting. Mikel Arteta's maintained that he doesn't need to do too much over the summer to get Arsenal from runners up to title winners. And yeah, it was more of the same against Wolves. A 2-0 win. Havertz and Saka, 2 of the key attacking players, getting the goals. And another excellent defensive display and helped out by a terrific save from David Raya. So I think this is going to be another tight game. I mean, Unai Emery did a bit of a job on his former club last season. 1-0 at Villa Park. Arsenal had a goal disallowed late on there. And 2-0 at the Emirates, which really kind of undermined Arsenal's title challenge. And I'm expecting another tight game, actually. Arsenal didn't really turn on the style until the new year last season. Quite a few 1-0 away wins early on, and I like the look of under 2.5 goals at odds against in this one.
Dan, what did you make of Villa? I mean, a lot of people have mentioned, they've got it all to do this season with having to play European football, of course, with the Champions League. There's been a couple of incomings, a couple of outgoings as well, but I thought they looked impressive against West Ham.
Yeah, I was impressed with them. I went with West Ham last week. I thought West Ham would start well with the new signings. A lot of them, those West Ham's new signings, the likes of Somerville, Fulkrug, started on the bench. Maybe they're going to take a bit of time to get going. But Villa were very impressive, fully deserved their win. I thought West Ham's penalty was a very fortunate decision as well, because he probably shouldn't have been given. And they've recovered from that setback as well, gone on to get a deserved win. For this game, as James has mentioned, Villa had a good record against Arsenal last season. I think Emery seems to know how to set up against his old team. Still, obviously, a very, very tough game for Villa, but the same could be said for both sides. I just think looking at the odds here, I mean, Arsenal odds on, the draw looks overpriced to me. That would be where I'll be looking. Arsenal did what they had to do against Wolves. They weren't at their best, but won the game pretty comfortably. They'll probably get better as the season goes on. It's probably a decent time for Villa to play them. Maybe Arsenal not, quite into their full flow at the moment. So I think Villa, may be good enough to nick a point here.
Okay, well, James thinks probably a lack of goals at Villa Park, and Dan's going for a draw in the big game. Just to remind you again, it's at Villa Park on Saturday, a 5:30 kickoff for the game of the weekend in the Premier League, Aston Villa against Arsenal. Time to look ahead now to the rest of the games in the top flight, and we'll start off with Saturday's early kickoff. The lunchtime game is at the Amex Stadium, Brighton against Manchester United. I know it's very early in the season, but we're talking about the league leaders, James, at the moment. Brighton with a thumping win at Everton last weekend.
Absolutely. I mean, you looked at that and the kind of potential clash of styles, and Goodison Park charged up for the start of the final season there. And Brighton did a great job, not only avoiding a slip-up, but, comprehensive 3-0 winners. Mitoma back fully fit and looking terrific. And yeah, I quite fancy them to upset United as well. United won at the Amex on the last day of last season. Brighton have won the previous 4 Premier League games against them, so there's no fear factor there at all. And I just think United made a winning start. Obviously, they were okay. I just felt they still look a little bit laboured, and I think they will do in the early weeks of the season. Kind of Casemiro still in midfield, Mason Mount trying to establish himself after an injury hit second season. Fernandes up front while Højlund's out, and So I just feel that Brighton can really capitalise on that terrific opening win, and they look a decent price.
Yeah, around about 6-4 Brighton to claim the victory. The draw 27-10, 13-8 Manchester United. I thought with United, Dan, the first half performance was pretty decent against Fulham, and then they just seemed to go to pieces a little bit again in the second half. Obviously, they got the goal in the second half to win it, but that will be a big concern going down to Brighton.
Yeah, I think when they started at very early stages slow, then in the first half, finished the first half well, looked on top, looked like a goal was coming, and then they seemed to take a step back in the second half, and you couldn't really see the winning goal coming, even though it did in the end. I mean, I think probably playing without a centre forward doesn't help at the moment. They're being linked with buying a centre forward. Højlund's out injured at the moment as well. Seem very reluctant to play Rashford through the middle these days. So I think that's an issue for United. This is one of them games though where you kind of look at it, and before I looked at the prices, I'm thinking, well, maybe I'd like to get with Brighton here in some way. And I looked at the prices, and Brighton are slight favourites, and I've actually gone completely the other way now. And I'm going to go with Man United on the draw no bet. Just a shade of odds on. They did finish 12 points above Brighton last season, even though Man United have had what everybody says was an awful season, 8th place, their worst finish since I think 1990, but they were still 12 points above Brighton. They've still got some match-winning players in their ranks, the likes of Garnacho. If he starts this game, he come off the bench in the first match. Bruno Fernandes can often provide a moment of magic. And Brighton, I thought, were a little bit flattered by that 3-0. As well as they played at Everton. I think the shot count was 10-9 in Brighton's favour. Ashley Young was sent off, so they played the last 25 minutes against 10 men. So I'm not sure they were as convincing as the score suggests. So I'm going to go for a reversal of fortunes here and Man United to nick the win.
Okay, an intriguing encounter then at the Amex Stadium on Saturday. We've got no fewer than 5 games kicking off at 3 o'clock on Saturday as well. Let's start off with a bit of a London derby at Selhurst Park. Crystal Palace against West Ham. Continued speculation at the moment regarding a number of Palace players potentially leaving before the transfer window closes. Can't help them, James, when it comes to preparing for this game.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, they've kind of made a rod for their own back with that fantastic run of form at the end of last season. Suddenly everyone's kind of taken note of some of their star players. So, yeah, Palace definitely need the transfer window to close sharpish. I think in this game, I think both teams probably look stronger going forward than in defence. And I like the look of over 3.5 goals. And Palace, during that fine run at the end of last season, they thumped West Ham 5-2 at Selhurst. And scored 16 goals in the last 4 home games. I mean, we mentioned West Ham's defeat to Villa. Again, I think it's going to take time for the defence to be sorted out. I think their squad just looks really kind of top heavy. Plenty of exciting attacking players. So early weeks of the season, I'll be looking to get with goals in West Ham games.
Yeah, just to remind you of the match odds for this one. Crystal Palace around about 11-10. The draw 13-5, 23-10 West Ham. You alluded to it earlier, Dan. It was a bit of a surprising team lineup from Julian Lopetegui last time out. We expect a few more of the new faces to feature. Do we think he might throw a couple of them in this time?
I think possibly, yes. There was Somerville certainly looked lively when he came off the bench. Fulkrug didn't get a lot of service when he came on, so whether he'll play him, make his first start, who knows? But I do think West Ham are going to get better as certainly as the season progresses. And I actually think at those odds, although they're not going to be anywhere near the best at the moment, West Ham 23-10, I'll be tempted by that. I think they've got a decent chance of winning this one. Palace, as has been mentioned, keep getting their good players keep getting linked away. I think Joachim Anderson's the latest one. Everybody was talking about Gurhey, but Fulham look like they're in for Joachim Anderson, the other central defender. So it's a bit of a worrying time for Palace, whether they can hold on to their best players. If they don't hold on to them, who they're going to get in to replace them. So, I think they're... And that first game at Brentford as well for Palace, I fancied them. Brentford then didn't have Tony as well. Tony didn't play, so it was a great chance for Palace to get something. And for me, it's a bit of a concern, that they've actually lost that game. I think with this game against West Ham, with all the quality West Ham have got going forward, Kudus actually he caught the eye for me as well against Villa. I thought he played pretty well. So West Ham for me got the edge in those attacking areas and look overpriced.
Craven Cottage is the venue for Fulham against Leicester. You've already mentioned, guys, that a number of players who are being linked with potential moves to Fulham. It looks like they're going to be busy before the transfer window closes. I thought, James, at Old Trafford there were signs that they look pretty decent, particularly going forward. I just wonder whether they can kind of build on that now, and it might take a few weeks, like we were saying with West Ham, for those new players to kind of gel together.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, after a busy transfer window, there are going to be teething problems, but I think Fulham have certainly got what it takes to finish, mid-table-ish again. And I actually like the look of them in this game. I think they had a really good record against the teams outside the top 8 last season. I think only lost 5 of their 22 games. So I think, in the games that they should be picking up points in, they were pretty reliable. And just looking at Leicester, I mean, they did well to turn it around against Tottenham. You're wondering, is that more down to Tottenham's kind of failures in a lack of ruthlessness or anything Leicester did particularly well? I think that effort on Monday night is going to have taken its toll a little bit. And Fulham really decent at home. I think a shade of odds on. I think they're a good bet.
Yeah, they're around about 4-5 Fulham to claim the victory. It's 14-5 the draw, 16-5 Leicester. Bit of praise for Leicester after that draw with Tottenham on Monday, Dan, but still massively reliant on Jamie Vardy if they're going to get any goals.
Yeah, it's a bit of an issue for them up front. I mean, Mavididi started on the bench, and he was pretty good for him in the Championship last season, but obviously plays more in one of the wider attacking positions. And certainly for centre forward, they do look heavily reliant on Vardy at the moment. However, Vardy looked pretty sharp considering he was, he was meant to be a massive injury doubt, wasn't he? Going into that game, not expected to play. Looked sharp, got his goal. Probably should have finished, his other big chance in the second half as well. Could have won the game for Leicester. But I thought Leicester, yes, you can look at Spurs started the game well and then faded, didn't react well to the conceding the goal. But Leicester, after maybe being too passive in the first half, stepped on a bit more to Spurs, and I thought they were pretty decent. In the second half, it's easy to forget as well that Leicester have got still quite a lot of Premier League experience in the side, so they're not your sort of typical team coming up from the Championship. And I just think that. I'm not going to. I think Fulham looks short enough here. 4-5 to win at home looks a short enough price to me. I would be maybe not inclined to go for Leicester, but I can see a low scoring game here, under 2.5 goals at evens. Fulham against United had quite a few openings, but they seem to lack a bit of a killer touch in front of goal. I'm not so sure they've got that real top quality at the top end. And Leicester, as we mentioned, over-reliant on Vardy. So low-scoring game for me, under 2.5 goals.
Just a quick word, Dan, as well on Leicester's new signing, Oliver Skipp. We're slightly surprised that, having featured for Spurs over the last couple of years, they've decided to sell him, and will he make an impact?
I think from Spurs' point of view, they're trying to progress the team, and they're allowing. He's a good Premier League pro, isn't he, Skip? Whether he's for a team that's looking to try and get into the top 4, not so sure. And 25 million the fee, I think that you'd struggle really to turn that kind of money down. I think he'll be decent for Leicester. You stick him in there with Ndidi. You can see them having a nice strong midfield there. Certainly when they're looking to resist teams like they are in this game away from home. So good deal probably for both clubs.
Yeah. Third game on the agenda on Saturday's 3 o'clock kickoff. So the champions, Manchester City, at home to newly promoted Ipswich. City are as short as 1-11 to claim the victory here. It's 11-1 the draw, 18-1 Ipswich. And most people who watched the early kickoff last week, James, in the game between Ipswich and Liverpool would have said, Ipswich look like a decent, well-organised side. And I think particularly at home at Portman Road, they might cause a few teams problems, but this is another task entirely, isn't it, going to the champions?
Yeah, I think Ipswich competed pretty well in that first game against Liverpool. Obviously a very tough opener, but first half they probably had the best couple of chances, and Liverpool had to wait until the hour mark to take the lead. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach this game at City. Another brutally tough game for a side who were in League One only a couple of years ago. I quite like the look of no goal before 21 minutes in this. I mean, as the match odds suggest, it is a difficult betting heat, really. You'd maybe be looking sort of 2-0, 3-0 City correct score at this stage of the season. They've not been blowing teams away early on under Pep Guardiola. But so maybe Ipswich will kind of temper their attacking instinct a little bit. I mean, if you're going to have respect for any opponents, then City away, going for a fifth straight Premier League title, I think are the teams to maybe take a back step against.
Well, Kieran McKenna played a 5-man midfield against Liverpool. If anybody didn't see that game, Liam Delap on his own up front, and it could be that Delap is running a lone furrow again against his former club on Saturday. City, on the other hand, Dan, they weren't necessarily at their best against Chelsea, but they didn't really need to be, did they, to go and claim that victory? We're hearing this week that Ilkay Gundogan might be set for a return to further bolster their midfield as well. It's worrying news for their rivals.
Yeah, they're only going to get stronger, aren't they? You got Phil Foden come off the bench last week. Kyle Walker was on the bench, so you'd expect they're going to be stronger again for this game against Ipswich, and as the weeks go by, they'll continue to get stronger. I was pretty impressed. To go to, I thought that was a big banana skin for Manchester City, given the issues over maybe the lack of sharpness for some of their players. But to go there, win the game deservedly, really too. Now they weren't amazing, but it's a tough away fixture that first up, and got the job done pretty well. I just think the class gap here is absolutely massive. I think Ipswich have got a shout at staying up. They've got they'll probably pick up some decent results at home. Not so sure they'll be as effective away. For that first half against Liverpool, they really pressed them, went kind of man for man in a lot of areas. Were probably edged the first half. I wonder though how much of it was Liverpool up in the tempo second half. When Liverpool stepped on it in the second half, the goals were coming really, and they could have scored a few more. And this game, maybe they'll hold out, as James says, for the first sort of 20 minutes. I certainly don't think they're going to hold out for the first 45, which is why I'm going to go for Manchester City to win both halves. It's only a shade of odds on 4-5. I think they'll be ahead at half time, and they're not sort of start to take their foot off the pedal. So City to win both halves for me.
Okay, let's move on to the next of the 3 o'clock kickoffs, which sees another newly promoted side in action as Southampton play host to Nottingham Forest. Saints, it's hard to kind of gauge where they are at this stage, James, after that game with Newcastle. Bearing in mind, Newcastle played so long with 10 men, and obviously they came out on the losing side, and in the end, Russell Martin's side. But this time around at home, it looks like a winnable game for them, and it looks like a game where, it sounds ridiculous to say in week 2, but it's almost a game where they need to get a positive result.
Yeah, I think definitely, Saints fans wouldn't have been too disappointed if you told them they were going to lose narrowly at Newcastle. But you're right, the context of the game and playing against 10 men for so long was, that felt like a disappointing result, didn't it? At least kind of pick up a point there against 10 men. That was a real opportunity to get a point on the board. They had a terrific home record at St Mary's in the Championship last season. And it'll be interesting to see if they really go on and kind of take risks in pursuit of 3 points this early in the season. Because I think this is a fixture they need to be winning. My bet in this one is Adam Armstrong to score at any time. Was absolutely fantastic at home last season for Saints. Scored 14 goals and registered 8 assists in 22 home starts. And he looked lively against Newcastle, admittedly a 10-man Newcastle. I think he had 5 shots. He had 1 cleared off the line brilliantly by Lewis Hall. So I think he's kind of got a point to prove in the Premier League. He's a bit of a kind of Mitrovic character before Mitrovic finally got the hang of scoring in the top flight. And I think this is a great opportunity for him to open his account this season.
Yeah, Adam Armstrong, another of those former Newcastle players who seems to go on from strength to strength afterwards. And you look at Mitrovic and Ivan Toney along the way as well. Nottingham Forest got themselves in front last week, Dan, against Bournemouth and couldn't kill off the game. And I just wonder whether maybe goal scoring is a slight issue. And like we said last week, you wouldn't necessarily expect so with the likes of Awoniyi and Chris Wood up front.
I think the issue they have, that's a game that they really should have been looking to win, especially with Solanke having just left for Bournemouth and not having a lot up front, is that the style that Nuno plays, he does prefer a counter-attacking style, and he's not the sort of manager, when his team goes one up to really sort of keep stepping on it and going on and dominate the game. They're probably happy wrongly to sit on it, and they got kind of punished at the end, didn't they? A bit of Bournemouth pressure and they nicked a goal, but funny enough, I think Forest under Nuno, they might be quite effective in away games because as I mentioned, he does like to counter attack. The personnel he's got there are very suited to that. You look at Morgan Gibbs-White, Alanga, Hudson-Odoi, a lot of pace there to hit teams on the break. And this is a real clash of styles. Southampton are still going to be quite possession-based. I mean, you could see that against Newcastle. I know they had a lot of the game against 10 men, but they were actually kind of bossing the game possession-wise, even at 11v11, ended up with 78% possession. The shot count was 19-3 in their favour. You can look at that and say, well, great, that is, fantastic stats-wise. But the goal they gave away, Southampton fans and viewers of the Championship would notice that happened a lot in the Championship. They're trying to pass the ball around at the back, ball nicked off of them, and a simple goal given away in a game that they should have got at least a point. I think they will be positive. I think they'll really try and attack this game and go for it. But I think Nottingham Forest are just the sort of team who will play a low block, soak it up, and then maybe have the edge, maybe have a little bit more quality going forward. So I think Forest are actually a little bit overpriced here. Southampton will go for the win. I think Forest might get the win. 7-4 Forest for me.
Yeah, I was quite surprised that Forest were as big as 7-4. Southampton 6-4 to claim the win, and the draw 12-5. The fifth and final 3 o'clock kickoff on Saturday is Tottenham against Everton. Let's start with you, Dan, from a Spurs perspective. Obviously frustrated not to get the win at Leicester, but created plenty of opportunities, and up against an Everton team who confidence will be at a low ebb after last week. They probably expect to go on and win this.
They would expect to, yeah. I'm not sure I'll be jumping at 4-9 to win the game. I have to be careful when talking about Spurs not to get too negative, and the highs be too high and the lows be too low. But I've got to say, I wasn't very impressed with the performance against Leicester. People were raving about Spurs at half time that have dominated the game. I just saw a lack of ruthlessness, really. That they got in front deservedly, good goal, and then they kind of, for want of a better word, they start posing on the ball, start just possession for possession's sake, don't really go for the kill, and you can sort of see what's coming next because Spurs don't keep many clean sheets. Yeah. You kind of know that there's going to be some kind of defensive error at some stage and a poor goal given away. And Leicester, in the end, let's be honest, they have the best chance after that when Vardy's through, and you'd back him. Well, that was a good save. You'd back him to finish that and win the game, and that's against a newly promoted team. You'd really be fancying Spurs not just to win, but win well. And I would worry about how some of those forward players play. It's early days for Solanke, but I thought he looked nervous. Didn't connect well with a couple of his finishes. His hold-up play wasn't that great. Brennan Johnson, I thought, was a big disappointment. Kept hitting the first man on the crosses. Lack of end products. They didn't impress me, Spurs. Maddison, I thought, was the best player and got taken off. So for me, Spurs against Everton, Dyche will be different to how he was last week. They won't be. They'll probably play with a low block, look to frustrate, take advantage of set pieces, and they'll be putting corners right under the bar. Like they did last season at Goodison. On Vicario, who's still dodgy from corners. So I can see Everton nicking a goal, and given the lack of Spurs sort of firing, if you like, up front, Spurs may struggle to get more than one. So the draw for me, 15-4, looks a bit overpriced. I'm going to go with the draw.
Yeah, Dan mentioned there 15-4 the draw, 4-9 Tottenham, and it's around about 11-2 for Everton. We've seen Everton bounce back from those kind of disappointments before, James, like last week. It's going to be another tough test for them, though, isn't it, going off that performance?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, particularly when you think that they won their last 5 games of last season at home to 0. Then to concede 3 in the opening game against Brighton was a blow. I mean, Dan's mentioned the kind of clash of styles here, Dyche against Postecoglou, and I think there's no doubt that Everton will be out there, trying to frustrate Tottenham, play on the nerves of the home fans. I like the look of the draw Tottenham double result in this one, actually. In Spurs last season, where the masters of scoring crucial late goals, 65% of their goals in the league came after half time, and you can easily see Everton getting to 0-0. I think Spurs have got some really good options, attacking options off the bench as well. I think they will create chances. It's just as we saw at Leicester, whether they can take them. And they won 13 of their league matches at home last season. They're only actually ahead at half-time in 4 of those victories. So I think Spurs fans may have to be patient. Obviously, flying start against Leicester and then faded. I think it could be the reverse this time.
That's not our strong point, James. Our patience.
To be fair, Dan, I was going to say you're not the only fans that are lacking in patience at the moment. But that wraps up Saturday's action. We'll look ahead now to Sunday. There's no Monday night football this week, by the way, in the Premier League. So 3 games to look forward to on Sunday. 2 kick off at 2 p.m. UK time. And we'll start off with a game between Bournemouth and Newcastle. James, we'll start with you. Bournemouth, life without Dominic Solanke, and I think they probably would have snapped your hand off for a point at Nottingham Forest on the opening day.
Yeah, I think particularly after going behind, and there's not much between these 2 clubs, Forest and Bournemouth. I think so. I think Iraola's substitutes seem to do the trick. Certainly, kind of regained a bit of control of the game, and yeah, they were able to nick an important equaliser there. I actually quite like the look of another 1-1 draw in this one. I think it's an interesting one. See how Newcastle respond. Obviously playing with 10 men for so long in the opening day is not the ideal start. But then that's countered by the fact that they went on and won the game, which was really impressive. And when you think back to when they finished in the top 4, they had one of the best defences in the league. I think they only conceded 33 goals all season. Then last season they kind of fell apart, and it was scoring goals and conceding goals at a ridiculous rate. I think this term it's going to be a little bit tighter, and I think the 1-1 draw appeals in this one. Bournemouth took 4 points off Newcastle last season, so I don't think Eddie Howe's going to have it all his own way on his return to Dorset.
No, I think the home fans might well give him a warm reception at the start, but not necessarily after that. Bournemouth 2-1, by the way, to pick up the 3 points. It's 14-5 the draw. Newcastle 6-5. How do you see this one going down?
I think Newcastle 6-5 looks a decent bet. I think they're going to be on a real mission, this season with no European football. Newcastle to have a big push for that top 4. Got one of the best strikers in the league in Isak. Didn't get a lot of service last week because of having to play for so long with 10 men. I think he'll get more service at Bournemouth. You've got Anthony Gordon, a big threat in that attack as well. There's a class of Bruno Guimaraes, and Joe Linton I thought was absolutely superb, as well as his goal as well against Southampton. There's enough quality in that Newcastle team, certainly, I think, to cope with Bournemouth, who I think it's a good time to play them still at the moment. Solanke only just gone, spent big money on Evan Nielsen coming in as a replacement, but it's going to take him time to get used to the demands of the Premier League. So Forest, as I mentioned earlier, they sat on the lead and were punished by Bournemouth towards the end. I think Newcastle, if they get in front, will be a little bit more ruthless. So Newcastle for me to get the result.
Just a reminder that the Magpies will be without Fabian Schär for the next 3 matches after his red card against Southampton last week. So no Schär on the South Coast. Let's turn our attentions to the other 2 o'clock game now on Sunday, and it's at Molineux as Wolves take on Chelsea. We can talk all day about Chelsea, to be honest with you, couldn't we? I mean, you could be quite negative about how things have gone at Stamford Bridge so far, not only with that performance against City, but also the incomings and outgoings. But James, I think this will be a proper test as to where Enzo Maresca has got his team at this stage of the season. Wolves at home is never an easy place to go. I know it's a bit of a well-worn phrase, but I think they will make it difficult for them.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and particularly, we're recording this before Chelsea's eagerly anticipated Conference League qualifier against Servette. So, obviously played against City last weekend as tough an opener as you can get in the league, and then immediately into European action, and then, as you say, a tricky away game on Sunday. One thing Maresca can't complain about is a lack of squad depth, but I think we've already seen from the Raheem Sterling situation that surprise, senior players who are kind of high profile internationals and whatever aren't going to be that happy about being sort of 25th, 26th in line in the pecking order. So I mean, it is a mess, and I think Wolves obviously have their own issues. Selling some important players, including Pedro Neto over the summer, but competed fairly well at Arsenal, and I think Wolves draw no bet is a decent approach here, given that Chelsea are in action on Thursday. Wolves actually did the double over Chelsea and Tottenham last season. Also beat City at Molineux. So I think they will be really up for this, and yeah, with everything going on behind the scenes at Chelsea, I think they're worth opposing.
Just before we ask Danny's thoughts on the game, James, just wanted to have a quick word, because obviously a few people will be looking at first manager to be sacked market in the Premier League, and what's gone on over the last 7 days or so since we last talked. Are you even more tempted by the fact that Enzo Maresca might be that first to go?
I mean, it's hard to know, isn't it? Because you just think at some point the owners are going to have to say, well, actually, we, like United's owners have done. We appointed this bloke. This is on us, and at some point you have to give him time. But I mean, I'm still, to be honest, I'm still reeling from the Pochettino exit when it looked like they were actually making progress last season. So, God knows, really.
Well, yeah, you just wouldn't like to predict in terms of anything at Stamford Bridge at the moment. As we're speaking, by the way, Conor Gallagher has completed his move to Atletico Madrid as well. So another of last season's regulars out of the exit door at Stamford Bridge.
Could be another 2 or 3 Chelsea transfer updates before the end of the show, I imagine.
Without a doubt, I imagine. Wolves, by the way, are as big as 7-2 to win the game on Sunday. It's 3-1 the draw, 8-11 Chelsea. What have you made of both teams' start to the season, Dan?
Wolves, I think they're going to have a tough season. I was quite impressed with how they played at Arsenal. They've created a few chances. You kind of forget they've still got a strong midfield, João Gomez and Lamina, and to get to I know possession don't win your games, but 47% possession at the Emirates, so there's some going really. Arsenal normally absolutely dominate the ball. There's some. They played better than I anticipated. I think their issue is going to be top end of the pitch. They didn't have bundles of options last season. Now they've lost Pedro Neto as well, and unless they improve that area, then for me they are going to be in the bunch of teams that are going to be looking over the shoulder, and at risk of relegation. For this game, though, given that they've had a decent performance at Arsenal, Chelsea. It's against Manchester City, so you can't get too down about a defeat against Manchester City, but it didn't look right. They haven't looked right, let's be honest. They had a spell at the end of last season when they got on a run of wins, but Chelsea have not looked right for quite a few years now, with the turnover of players, as we've been talking about. So they're certainly not a team I think they're odds on, shade of odds on to win the game. I wouldn't be backing them at odds on. Wolves will make it tough for them, but I think Wolves may just lack that killer instinct to go and win the game. So I would go with a draw for me. The draw looks overpriced.
Okay, well, finally, 2 teams who picked up wins on the opening weekend of the season meet at Anfield as Liverpool take on Brentford. We mentioned that Ipswich had done well in the first half, James, and it's kind of hard when you're playing a team who have just come up from another league to sort of gauge where, say, Liverpool are at. But I thought in the second half they put some really outstanding moves together and scored 2 cracking goals. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, bearing in mind that was their first league game, obviously under Slot. All the attention was on Ipswich, because of their rapid rise. But I thought Liverpool fans should be pretty content with what they saw. The way they turned on the style and as you say, look really fluent in the second half at Portman Road, and again this looks a great opportunity for another 3 points. I think Liverpool to win and both teams to score could be the way to go here. Obviously Brentford made a winning start as well without Ivan Toney, but Mbeumo and Wissa are really useful Premier League goal scorers. Got Fabio Carvalho, who'll be keen to make an impact back at Anfield. So I think they could land a blow on the Liverpool defence. But Liverpool really impressive in that second half. And I think I mentioned in the kind of season previews, Slot has inherited a really, really good squad from Jurgen Klopp. Lots of players at the right age, some terrific quality. It's not like replacing Sir Alex Ferguson at Manchester United. I think Slot can really go places with this squad.
Well, Liverpool are 1-4 to win on Sunday. Brentford as big as 10-1, and the draw is 5-1. We're hearing reports this week, Dan, that Ivan Toney seems almost certain to leave Brentford before the transfer window closes and potentially to Saudi Arabia. Firstly, are you a bit surprised there's no Premier League team looking to try and sign him?
I am, yeah. I'm a big fan of Ivan Toney. I'll admit I got quite excited when Spurs were linked with him in the summer. I think that, maybe people are looking into the situation with the betting thing where he was he was out suspended for a season, but to me, when he goes onto the pitch, he's confident, and he's every right to be confident because he's got lots of ability. He's got good athleticism, nice touch, scores goals, good in the air, strength. And Gareth Southgate obviously saw that by picking him in his England squad despite a hell of a lot of competition for those forward places. So a bit surprised. I think Brentford are going to miss him. If he goes, especially the new signing that they brought in as well was out injured until January as well. So they may have to have another look at that and maybe bring another forward in. Brentford have, as James has mentioned, they've looked dangerous with Bournemouth on the break at times. I just wonder on a slot as Liverpool, they just look. One thing I noticed, they looked a bit more controlled against Ipswich. Didn't get broken on a great deal in that game, maybe as much as they did sometimes under Klopp. So maybe that's why they took a while to sort of, if offensively, make their mark on the game because they weren't taking as many risks. But I do think Liverpool get the job done in the end, but maybe not a high scoring win. So Liverpool under 3.5 goals at 15-8 for me. Brentford will go with a low block. They don't concede lots of goals, away from home. I think 10 of the, I know because I've researched it, 10 of their 19 away Premier League games last season, they conceded less than 2 goals, Brentford. So, that tells you they'll be hard to break down. But Liverpool, I think, will get the job done. Liverpool under 3.5 goals.
Okay, well, that wraps up all of the Premier League action for this weekend. Some cracking games to look forward to. Up next, it's time to focus on the EFL. So as promised now, time to look ahead to the weekend's action in the EFL. And our match in focus this week is a big game at the top end of League One. 2 teams expected to battle it out in terms of potential promotion this season as Charlton and Bolton go head-to-head at the Valley. Kick-off time, 3 o'clock on Saturday. We'll run you through the prices in a moment, but just a quick word, Dan, firstly on how these two have started the season. Bolton, of course, missed out on the playoff final last time around. Would have been expected to probably start quickly, not quite as quick as maybe they would have hoped.
No, they got sort of a bit of a scratchy sort of win away to Leyton Orient, where they didn't play the best football. And then, Wrexham, newly promoted, coming up, got a 0-0 draw. Did have most of the game, but Wrexham sort of hold on, got a good draw. 4 points from those 2 games, 2 tricky couple of games. It's not the worst start in the world, for Bolton, but Charlton as well. They're even better. They've got off to 2 1-0 wins. 1-0 win at Wigan, where they were kind of little bit of a sort of smash and grab, if you like. Wigan, had more of the game, but then they were dominant 1-0 winners at home to Leyton Orient at home, where they play quite a direct style under Nathan Jones, similar to how Luton played under him, like to get the ball forward early, really sort of put it on teams, lots of balls into the box. And this will be a clash of styles because Bolton, very much like a possession-based style. I think they're both going to be up thereabouts in the promotion race. I'd fancy them both to be top 6. Bolton are actually my pick. I think they'll give Birmingham possibly a run for their money in the title race. So I think they'll have a great season, but this is a tough away game. So for me, I'll go with the draw. I think the draw looks the way to go.
Yeah, 2-1 Charlton, 9-4 the draw, 11-8 Bolton. It does look like a really tough one to call here, James, between 2 pretty evenly matched teams, and Charlton at the Valley look a tough nut to crack.
Yeah, I think it could be another tight game, as Dan's mentioned. I like the look of Bolton each way at the start of the season in the title betting. It was a bit of a surprise that they kind of didn't really turn up in the playoff final last season. But I expect them to be pushing for automatic promotion again. And Charlton, a couple of 1-0 wins is a really solid start, given that they lost Alfie May in the summer, who won the Golden Boot in this division last season. So I think it's going to be tight. Just looking at that Bolton 0-0 draw against Wrexham, they actually had 8 shots on target, and 4 of those were from Dion Charles, the striker, who's a terrific goal scorer at this level. I think in a game where chances may be scarce and there aren't too many reliable goal scorers, I think Dion Charles at 11-2 to score first is a cracking bet. He scored 16 goals in 34 starts last season. and he notched inside the first 10 minutes against Orient on the opening day.
Yeah, he was a big loss when he was injured for Bolton. And I do think Dion Charles is one of those players like Alfie May who could take the step up in future. So the big game then in the EFL on Saturday afternoon, Charlton against Bolton. Up next, it's time to look at the EFL selections from Dan, where you'll go and hear Dan's best 3 picks across the Football League. And where are we starting with, Dan?
I'm going to go with Reading to win at Wrexham. I think Reading, the draw no bet, I'm going to go with 13-8. Wrexham have had these amazing couple of years. At some stage, there's going to be a bit of a roadblock. And, 2 promotions in a row is an incredible achievement. They started this season pretty well as well with 4 points, including that, that hard-fought point that we spoke about at Bolton. But this is a much tougher division for them, not a division where they're going to be able to sort of, blow teams away with their investments. And Reading, they've kind of been going the other way recently. Had a lot of issues with with the ownership of Dai Yong, and have been had a points deduction last season. Fears that they could be relegated to League Two, which would have been unthinkable for them. But under Ruben Sellers, they actually finished the season really well. Reading, things off the pitch seem to be taking a turn for the better now. Rob Couhig, who was an American owner, did fantastic work at Wycombe for years. He sounds like he's going to complete a takeover, which is fantastic news for Reading. They've kept hold of the key elements of last season's squad that finished so well, and they're playing very well. They've got a 1-1 draw at Birmingham, where a kind of a dodgy penalty cost them a win, which would have been an incredible win there at Birmingham, and then followed up with a 2-0 win at home to Wigan, who Wigan you'd expect to be among the promotion contenders as well. So great start for Reading. I think they'll strengthen again before the window shuts if this ownership change goes through, but they're looking pretty strong at the moment, and I would say this is a tight game, but Reading at 13-8 draw no bet with that bit of extra quality they got is overpriced. So that'd be the first one.
Okay, so Reading to win at Wrexham is the first of the tips. Draw no bet from Dan in the EFL selections. What's tip 2, Dan?
They're going to drop into League Two, just a straight win for Colchester at home to Harrogate. I think Colchester have invested quite a bit over the sort of last 2 windows, January and this summer, under Danny Cowley. Really ambitious managerial appointment they made, to help them stay up last season. I think this season they're going to be pushing, possibly to go out and getting that top 7 for the playoffs. They've already had an eye-catching result last weekend, won 2-0 at home to well-fancied MK Dons, beat Reading at home in the EFL Cup as well, another good result. I just think this is a drop down in class from last weekend from the MK Dons game. Harrogate, 1 point at the moment from 2 games, lost at home to newly promoted Bromley, nicked a late equaliser 3-3 away to Accrington, but didn't play that well in that game. Accrington had most of the game, and I think both teams may struggle, but certainly for Colchester, this is an easier task, and I fancy them to get the 3 points.
So we've got Reading and Colchester, and who's the third EFL tip, Dan?
You're going to go with Gillingham to win away to Fleetwood. Gillingham, like Colchester, another ambitious League Two side. A lot of investments gone in there. Brought in Mark Bonner as manager, the man who took Cambridge to promotion from League Two a couple of seasons ago. I think Gillingham are going to have a pretty strong season. You look at their ambition in the market. They brought Bradley Dack back in the last week as well. So a very eye-catching signing for them. Shows that where they're looking to take the club. Fleetwood, I think, going the other way. Charlie Adams stayed in as manager, but got relegated from League One last season. Have lost a few key players from last season. Bosun Lawal among those. Guy they got in from Celtic has moved on. Key, physical midfield player. So I think Fleetwood, challenging season for them. Back down in League Two. Gillingham, I think, could go up, and 9-5 to win this game away from home looks a really big price to me.
Yeah, I know a couple of Gillingham fans who are positive at the moment about potential promotion. So Dan's EFL selections, just to remind you: Reading draw no bet at Wrexham, Colchester to beat Harrogate, and a win for Gillingham against Fleetwood. James Milton's up next. He can bring us his bet builder 3 legs to follow this week. And what we're looking at here, James?
Yeah, I've spoken about Crystal Palace West Ham before. I'm expecting goals in this one. And so first leg of the bet builder, both teams to score, which if you're a fan of kind of trends over the past couple of decades, that's copped in 18 of Palace's last 20 Premier League meetings with West Ham. And obviously last weekend, both started out with 2-1 defeats. So I think both teams to score looks really solid. I'm going for Eberechi Eze to have over 3.5 shots. He's just such a key player for Palace. averaged 3.1 shots per game in the Premier League last season, and started off in the same vein at Brentford. Had 7 attempts, had that one free kick controversially ruled out for a foul in the penalty area. But yeah, I think he's going to get chances to test the West Ham goalkeeper. And then another shot selection is the final leg, kind of less of a kind of eye-catching attacking player, but Thomas Souček of West Ham, over 1.5 shots. He's kind of, you think all the new signings at West Ham, you kind of a little bit surprised to see Souček still playing a central role for them. They had 5 shots against Villa, big threat from set pieces as well, and I think he can get at least a couple of attempts off at Selhurst Park.
Not entirely sure how he didn't score in that game when he managed to clear the bar from 3 yards out. And Thomas Souček got that habit of getting big goals, of course, from the middle of the park. So Milton's Bet Builder 3 legs, just to remind you again, both teams to score in that game between West Ham and Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park. Eberechi Eze to have over 3.5 shots and over 1.5 shots for Thomas Souček. Let's turn our attentions now to Milton's prop shop. A couple of options here as well for this weekend. And where are we looking here, James?
Yeah, I'm looking at Harry Maguire to be shown a card against Brighton. I mean, he got booked against Fulham in quite unexpected circumstances. He was booked for simulation, which I don't think we expected him to have that in his locker at this stage of his career. But that's another boost for this bet. Anyway, I suspect there may be the odd mistimed tackle from the big man at the Amex Stadium. Brighton have got some really fleet-footed forwards. Saw Kaoru Mitoma cause absolute havoc at Goodison Park last weekend. Ashley Young was sent off. Tarkowski was booked. And I think it could be an awkward afternoon for Harry Maguire if he is selected in the heart of the United defence. And the second one I like is Andres Pereira to have an assist against Leicester for Fulham. Now, he was denied by Maguire, made a very important intervention when Fulham had a 2-on-1 counter-attack at Old Trafford. And Pereira really should have slipped the ball through for Alex Iwobi. I think in general he's capable of playing those kind of passes that unlock a defence. Looking at sort of Rodrigo Muniz and Emile Smith-Rowe, I think Fulham have got a couple of classy finishers playing in front of him. And Pereira had 7 assists in the league last season, 6 the season before. And, we saw Tottenham with James Maddison particularly creating bundles of chances against Leicester in that first half on Monday night. So I think Pereira may be the man to open up the Foxes at Craven Cottage.
Yeah, he's very close to breaking the deadlock at one stage as well when he played a ball across the 6-yard box, which Lisandro Martinez cleared from under his own bar. So that's James Milton's Bet Builder and prop shops for this week. And it's time now to turn to the assist treble, which was very unfortunate not to come in last weekend because we had Huddersfield to win against Stevenage. We had Carlisle to beat Barrow. And Milt's your selection of Sheffield United picked in injury time against 10-man Queen's Park Rangers.
Yes, having been 2-0 up inside about 15 minutes, I think. But, I mean, it's a traditional way to start the football betting season, isn't it, with a tale of woe like that. We'll try and go one better this time.
Needless to say, I was banging my head against the wall at around about 5 o'clock last weekend. But we're going to turn our attention to see if we can get some success this time around. Dan, let's start with you. Who's your selection for this week's treble?
I'm going to go with Colchester to win at home to Harrogate. I mean, Colchester, as I mentioned, they were 20, only escaped relegation on the last day of last season, but done a lot of squad strengthening. People like Teddy Bishop and Jack Payne, midfielders signed from the league above. Harrogate finished 13th, having sort of pushed for the playoffs for a while, but they lost a real key player, Abraham Odo, who got 9 goals to them, and he was sold to Peterborough. So I think they're kind of two clubs going in different directions, and Colchester, I think, will be too strong in this one.
So
the selection of Dan is Colchester. James, who are you selecting here?
Yeah, I'm in League Two as well. Chesterfield to beat Salford. Chesterfield obviously came up having romped to the National League title and went off as anti-post favourites for League Two. You're just interested to see how they cope. And hammered Crewe 5-0 last weekend. Crewe, of course, lost in the playoff final last season. So that was a serious statement of intent from Chesterfield. were 4-0 up inside half an hour, and Salford still waiting for their first goal of the season. They've played 4 matches in all competitions, lost 3 of them to 0, had a 0-0 draw at Bradford, where they rarely threatened the goal as well. So I think they could be overpowered by Chesterfield.
Okay, so Chesterfield and Colchester in League Two. I'm going to take the step up to the Championship, and I'm going with Watford to beat Derby at Vicarage Road. Around about 9-10, the Hornets, who have started the season like a house on fire at the moment, particularly from a goal-scoring perspective. They beat Stoke 3-0 last weekend. They beat the MK Dons 5-0 prior to that in the EFL Cup, and they scored 3 in a 3-2 victory at Millwall. Derby have got off to a relatively decent start after their promotion, but should we say they were slightly fortuitous to pick up the win against Middlesbrough last week. Middlesbrough dominated for long periods. It was a big defensive mistake which led to Derby's goal as well, and they were able to hold on for that 1-0. Don't think they'll be able to do that at Watford, who look like they're absolutely flying going forward. So I'm going to go for Watford to beat Derby. Just to reiterate again, Colchester, Chesterfield and Watford are the assist treble. We'll complete this week's assist with the naps of the week for both James and for Dan. James, let's start with your nap.
Yeah, I'm going for both teams to score in Bristol City against Coventry. Coventry won 1-0 at Bristol City in the EFL Cup. I think this game is going to be far more entertaining. But Bristol City kicked off the campaign with a 1-1 draw at Hull. Then they beat Millwall 4-3 last weekend at home. Coventry beat Oxford 3-2. So, yeah, I'm expecting fireworks down at Bristol City this weekend.
Okay, and finally, Dan, what's your nap of the week?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Reading, draw no bet, away to Wrexham in League One. I just think a lot of teams that have gone to Wrexham in recent seasons, that you almost see that they're intimidated by the atmosphere there and a big crowd. I don't think Reading will be. They've gone to Birmingham, 28,000 fans on the first day of the season, played really, really well. As I mentioned earlier in the show, got a 1-1 draw and could have been better without a controversial penalty decision given against them. Followed that up with a 2-0 win at home to Wigan. Wrexham were kind of hanging on for that 0-0 away to Bolton. So I think Reading are going to have the stronger season. And for that reason, the prices draw no bet looks a great bet to me.
Okay, they are all our selections for this week's Premier League and EFL action then. My thanks to Dan Charles and James Milton for joining us again this week on The Assist. Don't forget, of course, to like, subscribe and comment. And also to remind you that if you like your golf and your golf betting, then don't miss The Sweet Spot with Steve Palmer every Tuesday on the Racing Post YouTube channel. We'll be back with The Assist next week. So enjoy your football this weekend and please remember to gamble responsibly.